All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm about to do the reading for, sorry, I'm glaring because the light is so bright, but you can't see that. So I'm going to do the reading for day 9, Homestead Act. All right, starting at the Explore, the Homestead Act. You're answering the CFU questions. What are the requirements for a person to be able to get land under this law? Remember that a law is the same thing as an act. What are people supposed to use this land for? There's a vocabulary word that you're looking for, a non-content vocabulary word that you're looking for to answer this. How long do people have to live on the land before it belongs to them? Or how long do people have to live on the land before it belongs to them? You should be thinking about who does the land belong to if it doesn't belong to them at first. An act to secure homesteads to actual settlers on the public domain. Public domain means property of the government. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled that any person who is the head of a family or who has arrived at the age of 21 years and is a citizen of the United States or shall have filed his declaration of intention to become such. So at that time period, so long as you met certain qualifications, if you immigrated to the United States, the only thing that you needed to do in order to become a citizen was meet certain characteristics, including being a white man, and declare your intention of becoming a formal citizen. As required by the naturalization, that means immigration laws of the United States, and who has never borne arms against the United States government. So remember this, so this is happening in 1862, which means it's in the middle of the Civil War. So the Confederates are bearing arms against the U.S. government. So if you were a soldier in the Confederate Army, or if you supported the Confederacy, you did not count. Or given aid and comfort to its enemies, shall from after the 1st of January 1963 be entitled to enter 1/4 section or less quantity or appropriated public lands. So I just want to remind you, because I had a pause, it is saying that if you were a part of the Confederacy at all, you do not get to participate in this program. If you aren't a part of the Confederacy and you match all of the requirements, then you do get the possibility. Section 2. And be it further enacted that the person applying for the benefit of this act shall swear before the said register or receiver that such application is made for his or her exclusive use and benefit. Please notice the her. So when it said head of families, it didn't necessarily mean that you had to be a man. Women were allowed to participate in and take advantage of the Homestead Act. And that said entry is made for the purpose of actual settlement and cultivation. Cultivation means farming, and not either directly or indirectly for the use or benefit of any other person or persons whomsoever. And on payment of $10, he or she shall thereupon be permitted to enter the quantity of land specified. You pay $10, you get to have this land, or you get to move to this land. He or she shall thereupon be permitted to enter the quantity of the land specified, provided, however, that no certificate shall be given until the expiration of 5 years from the date of such entry. So you can, by entry, it means to basically move onto the land. And if at the expiration of such time shall prove by 2 credible witnesses that he, she, or they have resided upon or cultivated the same for the term of 5 years immediately succeeding the time of filling the affidavit foresaid. An affidavit is simply a witness statement or testimony that something happened. Then in such case, he, she, or they, if at the time a citizen of the United States, shall be entitled to a patent, as in other cases provided by law. So here a patent means not a lease, it means that I can't remember this word, y'all, real life. But it's the piece of paper that says that you own a land. right? So you have to have a piece of paper to prove that your family owns the land, and if they met the requirements in the Homestead Act, they could have that piece of paper. Next, you're going to explain the impact the federal government had on westward expansion. So remember, the federal government has 3 branches. How might one or more of those 3 branches be affecting westward expansion based on what you read? All right. So I'm going to go next to the back. Looks like this. All colored people that want to go to Kansas on September 5th, 1877 can do so for $5. Remember that 1877 is the end of Reconstruction. So the Homestead Act is passed in the middle of the Civil War. This poster comes from 1877, so after the Civil Wars ended, after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, after the backlash that we read about the other day has started, 1877. In 1879, an African-American man from Louisiana wrote a letter to the governor of Kansas that read in part, "I am very anxious to reach your state, not just because of the great race now made for it, but because of the sacredness of her soil washed with the blood of humanitarians for the cause of Black freedom." So when it says great race, it's talking about all the people who are trying to take advantage of the Homestead Act. This man was not alone. Thousands of African Americans made their way to Kansas and other western states after Reconstruction. The Homestead Act and other liberal land laws offered Blacks, in theory, the opportunity to escape the racism and oppression of the post-war South, remember Reconstruction, white Southern backlash, and become owners of their own tracts of private farmland. For people who had spent their lives working the land of white masters with no freedom or pay, the opportunity offered by these land laws must have seemed an answer to a prayer. Many individuals and families were indeed willing to leave the only place they had known to move to a place few of them had ever seen. The large-scale Black migration from the South to Kansas became known as the Great Exodus, and those participating in it called exodusters. You're answering the question, who were the exodusters and why was the Homestead Act important to them? Next, passage of the Homestead Bill. Great inducements, liberal offers to all who wish to secure for themselves a home. Abilene, as in Abilene, Texas, is beautifully situated on a small stream of clear running water 1 mile north of the Smoky Hill River near the geographical center of Dickson County, and on the great thoroughfare from the Missouri River to the Gold Region. So remember, at this time, the primary way of traveling, right, with speed is through steamboat. So being close to a river makes a location an ideal place for trade and for just general travel to other parts of the country. New Mexico and California. The country around Abilene is the most fertile, which remember means it's good for farming, and beautiful that can be found in these states. Its character being an intermixture of timber and prairie, timber meaning forest, peculiarly adapted to agricultural purpose. The fertility of the soil, the excellence of the water, the healthiness of the location, and the abundance of timber and building at one are inducements. Those means things that would excite you to have of no ordinary character. While in addition, the rich mineral resources of this portion of the state, the salt springs, and extensive coal fields west of us on the Smoky Hill, ensuring the early completion of the railroad from Missouri River, make it one of the best natural business points in the state. All right, so they're saying that all of the resources mean the railroad, which doesn't exist yet, is likely to be completed as fastly there versus in other places. And it is a strong it is on the cusp, about to be a strong economic center. How does this newspaper try to get people to take advantage of the Homestead Act? All right. So the final thing I'm going to read about this page, cattlemen on the plains. You have the Nebraska Cowboys, 1888. That's from the Library of Congress. There's no information for me to read in the picture, so it's up to you to describe. You're going to contrast this image with the second image of Twilight Charlie, the Road Sport Sulphur Sam's Double, from the Denver Public Library. So, and you're going to answer which one do you think is more accurate and why. So accurate means which one do you think is more historically accurate? Which one do you think is more true to what life was actually like in the time period? In addition to homesteaders, another key group on the Great Plains was the cowboys. Vocab. Cowboys were hired by cattle ranchers for the long drive, vocab, herding cattle hundreds of miles from Texas north to meet the new railroads in places like Kansas. At Abilene, remember that, and Dodge City, Kansas, ranchers sold their longhorns and trail-weary cowboys crowded into saloons. These cow towns captured the nation's imagination as symbols of the Wild West, but the reality was much less exciting. Cowboys, many of them African Americans and Latinos, were really farmhands on horseback who worked long, harsh hours for low pay. As railroads extended into Texas and throughout the West, the long drive was abandoned, but stockyards were built beside the railroad tracks and trains to these cattle to giant slaughterhouses in cities like Chicago. A slaughterhouse is what it sounds like. It's where you take cattle to be killed and then turned into meat for people to eat, which turned them into cheap beef, should have kept reading, for the customers back east. And you're going to explain how cowboys and railroads were important to the nation's economy. So think about the number of cities and places that are mentioned in this reading. Yep. All right. There you go.